What's going on, everybody? It's your boy C-Zar, and we are talking about Ethereum today. The purpose of this video is to discuss the long-term prospects of Ethereum, where I believe we're going to go over the coming weeks and months to the upside, and where I think we're going to go, what the all-time high for this bull cycle will be. Yes, that's the point of this video. So if that sounds good to you, hit the like button, subscribe. Thank you all for being here. Let's get into it. Okay, so long-term perspectives demand that we look at long-term time frames, right? So here we are on the weekly time frame, and perhaps we can start off with some short-term stuff real quick. You know, here obviously you have a pretty damn big wick to the upside. You've had a massive move from April 7th all the way up here, you guys. Very, very massive move for Ethereum. All this bearishness that we had from March of 2024 up until April 7th of this year, over a year's worth of bearishness just engulfed in less than half a year. Like crazy, crazy stuff, right? We might take a little pause. We might take a little bit of a pause here, but nothing too crazy, right? Whenever Ethereum gets these wicking candles, we normally do stall for a couple weeks. And being that we just broke out of this range, it's fairly common to actually touch back at the prior resistance point before moving higher. So we really could move down to $4,100 or $4,200. We're at $4,400 now. I think the worst of it, as far as what we've seen to the downside, I think the worst of it has already happened, right? I know that Ethereum's been on a nonstop tear for quite a while now, but I would expect something more along the lines of this kind of consolidation phase to start taking place between now and maybe the next couple of weeks. I don't think it's going to take this long. I just don't think that next week we're going to continue to move up, right? I think that we will see new all-time highs soon for Ethereum, probably in September, but just not right now, okay? Now that I've gotten that out of the way, and I could be wrong. Maybe it's sooner than that. Maybe this consolidation phase isn't as long as I'm expecting it to be. But I do intend, right? I do expect that we will see $4,100 to $4,200 somewhere around there. Even if we go to $4,000, we're fine. Okay, it's not a big deal. I doubt that we get below $4,000 though. All right, so looking at this here on a weekly time frame, this is the all-time history index for Ethereum. I want to look at something. Do we have something with volume on it? Yeah, this one here. This one would. Let's use this one. Okay. And maybe we could look at a monthly. We'll look at a monthly in a second, okay? From Ethereum's inception, I want to just look and see what we've seen as far as fib extensions goes, where we respect these fib extensions, right? From a high to a low, we went all the way up to our 1886200, stopped there, found support at the 1414. That's actually a very common thing to do. Okay, so that's just something that I want to note. Go up higher here. We're going to get into some more serious stuff in a second, but this is just to get familiar. All the way up to the money zone. Crazy, crazy move. Very powerful stuff in the beginning days, right? In those early days. That 2017 cycle was no joke, you guys. High to low. We haven't seen anything like it since, man. High to low here. Stopped at the 1414 last cycle. And last cycle, I think, for Ethereum was a pretty strong cycle. You know, we outperformed Bitcoin most of that cycle. A lot of people expected Ethereum to outperform Bitcoin this cycle, but it hasn't. I think even with how strong Ethereum was last cycle, I think Bitcoin was just weak last cycle, and therefore I think a lot of cryptos were as well. So even though we stopped at the 1414, and that was a pretty powerful cycle in itself, going from $80 all the way up to $4,800, that was a very powerful move. I think that as far as the fibs go, this was relatively weak, right? And typically, whenever you see new all-time highs in crypto, you go up to your 1618 or higher. I want to look at this too, just real quick while we're looking at these relative fibs. High to low here. High to low here. We're using the fibs for now. We're going to bust out the other indicators in a second, okay? Up into the money zone area there. Okay, so you like that. You definitely do like that zone. Whenever you're doing strong movements, that's what you do. Okay, so this is the bull cycle high to the bear market low. Now notice that this is the weakest bear market we've ever seen. Weakest bear market followed by a very lagging and laggard, lackadaisical bull market that really hasn't kicked off until this year in April, right? High to low, I think that the expectation at a bare minimum that anybody should have by the end of this cycle for Ethereum would be about $10,000. At a bare minimum, if anybody's calling for prices that are less than $10,000 by the end of this bull cycle, they're crazy. They're absolutely crazy. And that was the 1414 that we saw last cycle. However, I think that we're going to see a higher reading in the fibs. Again, I think that even though last cycle was pretty strong for ETH, I think that this cycle will be stronger in regards to the fibs, and we will see something at about $13,556. I don't believe that we're going to go up here to the 2618 and above. I mean, in time, maybe, right? Perhaps. But I don't believe that's what we have in store this cycle. I think something between 13,000 and 25.8 thousand, that sounds appropriate to me. Yes, 25.8 thousand for Ethereum could happen. I wouldn't be surprised if we stopped somewhere even just below this area, maybe at 20K itself. Psychological resistance, but Ethereum and Bitcoin, they both actually do like to find resistance just above their golden ratio. So something right above 13K, 14K, 15K, that is a very probabilistic outcome, okay? And am I on the right high? It's very important that I'm on the right high. I think I was off just a little bit. So that changes the numbers just a little bit there, right? You can see just a little bit. We go from the 1618 being to 13.5 to 14,000. That's a sizable difference. So it's important to have that right. Cycle high to cycle low fib there. Looking at this and then putting this fib from a high here of this range to the low here on this fib, on this range. Come on now. High to low. Hold on, you guys. My daughter's watching Cinderella in the other room, and it's on full blast. So whenever the door opens, it's like I can just hear that pretty clearly. I'm sure you guys could hear it too. You're like a little Disney music for you there. High to low here. The expectation would be then, if we're taking the high to low here, that we'd go to the 1618 to the 200, and on these smaller fib extensions, that's oftentimes when we do encounter the money zone, right, where we've seen that 2618 to 3113 throughout Ethereum's life. So this actually does add to the idea that we do see a 20,000 or higher price for Ethereum by the end of the cycle, just using the fibs here, right? We could stop at the 1886200. We've stopped at that level before as well, and that is just above the 1414, which typically, if you interact with the 1414, you do go just above it. So this also makes sense. 10,600, 12,000. That's the low end of the range. Let's put a number. Let's put a little line here. You know, that's the low end of our range, and then I would say we can include 27,000. I don't know if we quite get to 27,000, but this would be the high ends of the range. I'll delete all the chicken scratch, and then we will just run with that there. Okay, so that's the given range that I would believe Ethereum sees so far by the end of the cycle. Now let's run some numbers, okay? Let's run some numbers. Let's go to coin market cap and just see what kind of market cap total that would have. I'm assuming that at $10,000, that's still less than $1 trillion, would it be? No, it would have to be more. We're over $1 trillion at a $10,000 price, right? Yeah, in market cap, we would have to be. We'd be a multi-trillion-dollar price at $20,000 or above. Okay, so let's see, 531 billion right now. Let's just round up and call it 531 billion. Google calculator here. Google calculator. I'm just getting an idea. I have a purpose for this. Okay, I have a purpose. But 10,600 at the low end. 10,000. What? How would I do this? Oh, you know what? It would be easier actually to just do it this way. Let's do it this way. It'll be less math, at least for me. Let's do it like this, yeah. 2.38x, okay? 2.38x times, and we have a $531 billion market cap, so 531. Now, because I'm not putting all the zeros in there, 1,000 will equal a trillion. Does that make sense? 10,000 equals 10 trillion, but we're not going to get to there. So that's 1.264 trillion, $1,264 billion. Okay, so at a 10,000, at this minimum target here, Ethereum would be breaking that threshold of $1 trillion market cap, and I think that that's going to happen. Now, something to consider would be the ETH to BTC pair. Let's see if this makes sense for that, right? If we can't make sense out of a market cap that high, 1.26 trillion, then we're looking at this wrong. But I think that we'll be able to make sense out of this, all right? And the way that we do that is we look at ETH to BTC. We calculate, or we at least predict, we come up with a forecast of where ETH BTC will be. That valuation, we input that to the Bitcoin price, and then whatever that price is, we can input that to the market cap and see what that will be. Does that make sense? If it doesn't make sense, just pay attention and we'll get to it, okay? Clearly here, you've had a rough time with ETH BTC since 2021. You've just slowly slumped over and then boom, double bottom. That is a true double bottom right there. It looks like a double bottom to me. I don't think that you're going to get above these highs, or if you do, maybe you do, but you don't see new all-time highs altogether. But I would at least expect that you come up. I mean, typically with V-shaped recoveries, you go back to where the V formed, and who's to say where the V formed? Did it form here? Did it form here? I feel like most of this drop started here, so I would expect that we return to where the V started and maybe even just above there. That's very common behavior. Just right here, kind of in this area. Let's take a fib just to see if we're right on point here. High to low. And I haven't done this already, right? I'm just freeballing it here. Okay, so that's a little bit above the golden ratio, a little bit below the 786. to me, it would be more likely that we would at least stop at the 786, but let's take them all into account. Let's take the golden ratio into account too, okay? So we'll do that. The golden ratio, because maybe the V started here, maybe it didn't start up here, and then we go just above it, that's the golden ratio. 4.7% to 5.3% of a Bitcoin, okay? So let's just take the low one. Let's be conservative. 4% of a Bitcoin, and whenever we delete that, it's still saved here in the history, so we'll have that $1.26 trillion mark, okay? I know it's a lot of math, it's not sexy, but hopefully by the end of this video, you guys, you'll not only have a better understanding of why I believe Ethereum's going to prices that are above $10,000, but you yourself will develop your own conviction in that. And conviction is necessary, you guys. When we're in these bull market cycles and there's ups, there's downs, there's negative news, there's wars breaking out, pieces breaking out, inflation going up or down or whatever, and there's all these kind of media pieces that can shake you out of your positions, it's important to have conviction, okay? Hopefully by the end of this video, you will have conviction. Even if you sit through, we're doing homework right now, man. We're doing homework, and homework's not fun, but you got to do it. I don't think you got to do it, actually, but it's a requirement nonetheless. You do have to do it, I suppose. You don't need to do homework to understand a topic, though, okay? Anybody who does the tests and they get good scores on their tests, they clearly understand the topic. I actually hate homework, but we're doing homework nonetheless, all right? Nobody likes homework. So some people actually like homework more than the tests, if we're being fair, but I'm being a little bit too literal now. Let's get into this. Okay, so the minimum target is 4.77% of a Bitcoin, right? So 0.04777% of a Bitcoin. Now, we don't know what Bitcoin's price will be by the end of the cycle, but I'm assuming that we will see a $500,000 price, okay? Personally. And we'll go over that real quick. That's been a prediction that I've had since early 2023, late 2022. I forget how long we've been talking about that for, but it's been a long time. And I've held to that. That hasn't changed, right? Just the time frame of that's changed. Typically, Bitcoin does go to its 2272, and whenever you hit the 2272, you go just above there. What's just above 461? About $500,000. Now, if Bitcoin tops off at 500,000, in every single cycle that Bitcoin has topped off, we've seen Ethereum top off about a month later. Okay, Ethereum typically tops off after Bitcoin tops off. Okay, even last cycle, right? We go here, we topped off. I guess here, November, we had that double top with the last cycle. We did top off at the same time, okay? But the end of the bull market was here on this run, on this rally, right? And Ethereum topped off there in May. This is when all of our bull cycle top indicators were flashing. It topped off in May. Bitcoin had its end of cycle rally. I mean, we had that double top, sure, but that's not the end of the bull cycle, right? It's just like this was not the end of the bear cycle, right? Or I don't know. Let's see. We don't have any more history than that. If we're looking at Bitcoin, we don't have the history on there either. There was a cycle where Bitcoin had a slightly lower low, but the end of the bear cycle was back here. If that makes any sense, right? This is not the end of the bull cycle, at least not in my opinion. I think the end of the bull cycle clearly was here. And for Ethereum, last cycle it ended about a month after Bitcoin's cycle ended, which was in May, right? Then we had the crab market, and then we moved down, right? The bull market clearly ended here. This was a sideways consolidation phase, and then we moved down. So typically after a month is all I'm trying to say. $10,600 for Ethereum. Bitcoin will likely stop, I think, at about $500,000, but Ethereum will top off about a month after Bitcoin. So Bitcoin will likely not be at $500,000. Let's just input this number to $400,000. I hope that makes sense. Okay, I feel like we're being conservative with 400K. If we're expecting a $500,000 price for Bitcoin at the top, and then Bitcoin corrects a little bit, like a 20%, 25% correction, something like that, we could see a $400,000 price. Maybe it corrects a little bit less, but in that time, Ethereum continues to run, altcoins continue to run as they always do. That input should give us a $19,000 price, my friends. Are we being too generous? Are we being too generous? Maybe. You know, for some people, that might be skeptical. They might not be on board with the $400,000 price. How about let's just do a $200,000 price. Because again, if Bitcoin goes at half of that by the end of the cycle, we hit a $250,000 price, maybe it drops back down to $200,000 or $220,000 by the time that Ethereum tops off. What would a $200,000 price do? I guess we could have just cut $19,000 in half, couldn't we? So that's $9,500, pretty damn close to $10,000. And I personally don't think that Bitcoin stops at 260K. We've never stopped at our 1886 before. It's either the golden ratio or the 2272, and most of the time we actually do stop at the 2272. So, and we go a little bit above there every time. I think with what we're doing here, we're more likely to hit that golden ratio by the end of the year, and then the end of the cycle, we'll have our end of cycle finale going into 2026 and just really take off. We haven't hit the jets this whole cycle yet. We haven't had this nonstop 6 months of upside or even 3 months of upside. I guess I shouldn't say that because we have been having green month after green month, but it's been very stagnant nonetheless, right? It looks like we just moved up month after month here, but we had like a 5 or 6 week consolidation phase here, right? It's not that end of cycle rallying stuff like we're accustomed to here, That last 6 months typically is rather glorious. So once we see that, we should be, I think, running at least a 260. And again, assuming Bitcoin drops 20%, I mean, 260, that's above $2,000. With that, we've just made sense, I think, of this $10,000 price. So what would 20% be of 260? It's 260 is 26 is 10, right? 20%? Would that be 200,000? Let me see. Hold on. Why can't I do this? 260. 260. 260,000 times 0.2 equals that. 52,000. So that'd be 208,000. 208,000 if Bitcoin dropped 20% from its all-time high. That would give us a $10,000 price for Ethereum still. And I personally I don't think that we're going to stop at $10,000. I think that we'd stop just above there, right? Just above there. But still, that would be actually like right around there, right above our 1414, even with that calculation, it makes sense. So on the low end of things, that makes sense. Even if you're not on the same, I don't believe that this is where Ethereum's going to go, right? This is just the more conservative outcome for both Bitcoin and Ethereum. It would have to be, because if Ethereum, and this is also just based on the ETH BTC conservative scale as well of this 0.04777 area. We haven't even gotten to what happens if Ethereum comes all the way up to 7% of a Bitcoin, right? Things only get more bullish from here. We're starting low and we're building up, okay? Just building a base of understanding as to why $10,000 makes sense. And anything really below $10,000, okay, maybe a little bit below, doesn't make sense, right? If anything below $9,900 just really doesn't make sense, not in my opinion. And that's the very conservative, even pessimistic outcome. We'd have a pretty lackluster cycle, in my opinion, if that happened. And I don't think we're going to. I think we've been very well structured this whole cycle, very boring so far, and that's going to build for a very beautiful finale phase, which we're right on the precipice of achieving, okay? So, again, ETH BTC here, if we're at $500,000 by the end of the cycle, and maybe we, let's say Bitcoin's at $400,000 by the time Ethereum tops up, that's a $19,000 price. I very much believe Bitcoin will be at a higher price of $400,000 by the end of the cycle, okay? I don't think that that's where we're going to be, or at least by the time Ethereum tops off, but that's making sense for 19,000. Let's say Bitcoin is at 400,000, 450,000, sorry. That would give us a $21.5 thousand price for Ethereum. Okay, 21.5 thousand is pretty damn close to our 1886200 area here. Okay, maybe the ETH BTC pair doesn't stop here. Perhaps what we see is a growth overall that's like this. Last cycle in 2021, Ethereum BTC did top off in December, where the ETH USD pair topped off in November. So that's something to note as well. Topped off here in May, the same time that it topped off whenever the cycle ended there. I would think that we probably stop somewhere in the 786, 886 zone at the most. I don't think that we get above this high, and with that, I would at most expect that we hit the 886, but at least hit the golden ratio, and we've hit that zone. Let's do 7.35? 7.35. 7.355% times the same numbers, right? Let's do it. Maybe Bitcoin is lackluster, but ETH to BTC still comes up. Let's do that same number of 208,000, right? $208,000. That would give us a $15,300 Ethereum, okay? Making sense on the maximum end of the ETH. I bet you guys can hear that airplane outside. Probably. Maybe not anymore. I don't know. ETH BTC on the maximum side of this, taking the conservative side of the BTC USD pair, the price that we would get there would be about $15,300. So this is a little bit more appropriate in my opinion. That to the golden ratio, that makes more sense to me as kind of a minimum target, right? 10,000 pessimistic conservative target, 15,300. Okay, we could stop around here, just above the golden ratio. I could see that happening. Okay, it's very possible. All right, Ethereum BTC gets up to this area. Bitcoin doesn't see as much growth. To me, that doesn't make sense, but there's sense to be made of Ethereum still getting to these levels of $15,000 even with that, right? Now let's run it with that same number, that same kind of context. but instead of 208,000, let's input 450. Should we do 450? Maybe 420. 20%, right? Let's do 20% because 500,000. 20% would be 400,000. All right, let's do 400,000. That'd be about a $30,000 Ethereum, which personally I don't see happening. But again, we're not doing this to go over what I think is possible or what I think is not possible. We're going over what the numbers say, right? I don't think that we're going to stop at 10,000. I don't think that we're going to stop at 30,000. I think we're going to stop in between. But these are ways that we can make sense out of those prices happening, right? If Bitcoin tops off at 500K, comes back down to 400K, and by that time, a month later, Ethereum is topping off, and we're up here, which is the highest that I could give us. That gives us the highest ETH to BTC ratio. Does that make sense? Or ETH to USD price. I hope that makes sense. Looking at this here, I'm going to take away the fibs now. This is our given range, essentially $10,600 to. We had a pretty good range at first, right? It was this price, and then it was 26.9K. Now we're up at $30,000 for the maximum range. Let's input 30K and just see how crazy that would be on the market cap basis. $30,000. No. Yes, we're gonna do 30,000. No. We're not doing 30,000. We're gonna do. What's the current price? To 30,000. That'd be a 6.74x. Okay, 6.74 times 531 billion, right? 532 billion now. Okay, 532 billion. 6.74. That would give us a 35 or a 3.5, almost a 3.6 trillion dollar market cap. And that would be nuts, you guys. I think a $3.6 trillion market cap would be nuts. That'd put Ethereum above Bitcoin's current market cap by the end of the cycle. I'm not saying it can't happen. I could definitely see it happening. But that's definitely pushing the barrier. I doubt that Ethereum gets above a $2 trillion market cap this cycle, or at least too much above a $3 trillion market cap. If we take this, we do a 5.7x here. What we're at like, and the reason why I'm taking that there is because if we take a high to a low, we're right in that kind of heart of the 1886200 area, which is where I think we're going to top off at, a little bit above 20K. Let's take a 5.4x. 5.4x times 532 billion, right? That'd be about just under $3 trillion. I could see us hitting that, right? Bitcoin will see a $10 trillion market cap. Ethereum sees about 2.8 trillion. That leaves another like $7+ trillion for the rest of the altcoin markets to achieve, giving us an overall $20 trillion market cap by the end of the cycle, which is also what I expect, right? If we take total 2 here, crypto total market cap. Actually, let's just take total. We'll include it all. Let's do it. I would expect that if Bitcoin goes to $500,000, that we would then see the total market cap also go to its 2272 extension. Come on now. Load up for me. High to low here. And the 2272 appears at about 18.3 trillion. Typically with the 2272, you do go just above there. What's just above there? $20 trillion. I mean, that makes sense to me, man. Because then what would that be on the Bitcoin dominance? BTC.D. If Bitcoin has 10 trillion and there's another 10 trillion left, then that would imply that we're at about a 50% dominance ratio. Probably even more. Wow, guys. So we might actually have a greater than $20 trillion total market cap, right? At the peak. Well, Bitcoin will top off by the time altcoins top off, and that'll affect things a little bit. Let's see. Dominance, right? Dominance, that's what we're doing. I would expect the dominance, like it has the last couple of cycles, it'll come down to this area, but we'll probably form a higher low, just like we did last cycle. Here, this low was at that area. I would expect then we find support around 43%. So what Bitcoin's at 43% dominance. We see a $10 trillion market cap at the high, about that at least. We come down 20%, so $8 trillion. $8 trillion. If you're 43% of the total market cap and you're at $8 trillion, then yeah, 20 trillion should make sense. Should make about right sense, yeah. 20, give or take a little bit here or there, right? Assuming margins of error. It all makes sense to me, man. Basically what we're getting at here is if we were right on the ETH BTC pair going up to those Fibonacci levels, if we're right in assuming that Bitcoin sees a $500,000 price, then Ethereum should see a price above 20K by the end of the cycle. And with that, with the total market cap, we should get to a $20 trillion reading. Bitcoin's valuation, Bitcoin dominance would come down to this area just below 50K. By the end of the cycle for Bitcoin, it'll top off at $500,000. It'll come back down over that month of it coming down at the end of the cycle there. Altcoins will rally, Ethereum will rally, pushing up the total market cap higher. Bitcoin will fight that a little bit because it's the dominant portion of the crypto market cap, but even still, we should see the market cap rise. It makes a lot of sense to me, man. I don't know how else to make sense of it, but that's really all I've got. Let's see. Let's look at this one more time. Let's go on the monthly aspects. Ran a lot of numbers. I feel like I might sound like a mad person in this video, but that's okay. Get a little mad sometimes. This needs to load. The internet out here is so slow. It might just be T-Mobile. I don't know, but I blame the area more than I would blame T-Mobile, honestly. Looking at this here, let's look at the monthly time frames, and then we'll wrap this video up, okay? Monthly time frame here on the all-time history index. We can see that Ethereum, both of its bull cycles that it's had so far, we've seen the RSI go above the 90, okay, both times. We haven't interacted with that once yet. So with that being said, I don't think we're anywhere near the end of the cycle. I think that we have a lot more to go. We're clearly just getting started. We haven't even broken out of our prior cycle's highs, right? We're clearly just getting started, right? By the time we get above the 90 on the RSI, that should be an indicator that, okay, we're nearing the top. Okay, it's a very simple indicator there. Stochastics are getting overbought. Yeah, we've been overbought, in the past cycles as well. But typically, whenever you get overbought in the bull market, you do bounce off the 50, right? You don't go to the oversold zone. So what we would expect to see is a continued existence in the overbought zone. If we consolidate at all, it's up like this, something like this, and then by the beginning of 2026 or something like that, we should be coming back down. MACD, the histogram readings. I don't know if this will help us at all. They are dying off a little bit in momentum. I would expect this one, because I do expect a stronger cycle as far as like the fibs go. I would think that we see a stronger reading on the MACD as well. So if you're looking at the histograms on the monthly time frame on the MACD, just a standard default setup, we should see the histogram readings get up to these areas, if not higher. And again, oh wait, I'm sorry. Oh, this doesn't even include the first cycle. It only includes the last cycle. Okay, so then we should see readings up here, if not higher. And then this was the second top. This was the all-time high, but the end of the cycle was here, so maybe it's more appropriate to gauge it off of this kind of reading at like the 259 on the MACD histogram. We're nowhere near effectively, right? If we see this here, we bounced off the zero last time. That was a very fantastic result. Here we're getting a higher low bouncing off the zero. We just crossed. We should be getting some momentum underway over the coming months. I stand by what I said at the very beginning of the video. I think that we'll consolidate here for a few weeks, maybe a couple of weeks at least, and then continue to rally, ultimately going down to about $4,000, $4,200, and then rallying up to prices that are all the way up at $8,000 by the end of this next phase, sometime in September or October, and ultimately topping off this cycle above $20,000, probably below $26,000. I doubt we get to 30K, but that's my expectations. I don't have anything else that I want to say. Thank you all for being here. I'll see you on the next one. Hit the like button, subscribe, take care, bye-bye.